Okay. And we're live. And or wait, I'm sorry. We're live on the wrong screen. I swear to God,
We're live somewhere.
we're getting there. We're getting there. I I feel like it's every day. There we go. Every day I check everything and there's always one thing that I miss. So I'm really sorry about that. But we are live. It is fixed. And we have a lot to go over today. So
Well, the lore card's short, so that won't interfere too much.
yeah, I mean we have a lot to go over because I feel like there's a lot of things like the connections that you wanted to bring up as you were talking about previously playing Halo and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just uh I'm sorry. That always throws me off. So this week, welcome, Loose Canon. We're live. We're talking about Cryptoliths. We're kind of jumping back to Season of the Hunt lore with the lore book Call of the Cryptolith.
Yep.
And we're doing that because do you think we're going to be seeing some Zivu next season?
I don't see why not. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, as a lesser to Savathun, who I perceive as a bigger threat, why wouldn't we have something to do with Zivu before?
Mhm.
You know?
Bec-
Like, because if she's the grand puppet master or
mhm.
what people make her out to be, then I mean, you'd probably fight, level 2 boss on the way to big boss.
Well, see, I don't even think that we're gonna fight Zivu next season because I think that'd be a little wasteful of the character. I mean,
Think
potentially,
so? I mean, I
if
don't
they
see
if
why
they were
it
to do like
wouldn't.
a really good dungeon, then that could be awesome. But I
Yeah.
mean, I just think because you have Season of the Hunt, and Season of the Hunt was like almost entirely Zivu, and then you have Season of the Chosen,
It's so weird though. We got Season of the Hunt how long ago?
uh, 6 months, almost 9 months ago.
Yeah, so I mean, long enough to have a baby.
Hunt baby.
They planted the seed, and so now the baby's
Oh, he just had to do that. But yeah, because we had Zivu there, and then Season of the Chosen, we had some more Zivu where she was the one that did the thing. What's the planet name?
which planet?
Tora Bottle.
Oh, yeah.
She was the one on Tora Bottle who messed them all up and stuff and sent the Cabal coming to us. So that's how we got Keitel in our system. That was Zivu Arath. And even though
Yeah.
it was Zivu Arath, it was Savathun messing things behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And
I
Season of
guess
the
we
Splicer.
learned but didn't it seem backwards though? Because like it's funny that we learned about who was responsible for because that was Season of the Chosen
Yeah.
when we learned that.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost backwards.
well, that's what I mean. Like this whole year of seasons, Hunt, Chosen, Splicer, and whatever is coming next is supposed to be a year of dominoes being set up by Savathun, and we're going to see them fall. And so
Yeah.
when that first domino is Zevo Arath, it's kind of like, okay, so she's integral. And then the second domino is Zevu Arath, but not against us. And then the third domino is Quoria, I suppose, in a sense, if you were to like try to
Yeah.
locate the big bad. So I think the fourth one, I think we're gonna see more Zevu, and if not in the next season, I think in the Witch Queen, where it's either next season we're gonna see more Zevu, or Witch Queen we're 100% taking Zevu on, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, and they could drag it out for another like 2 more seasons.
Well, I think personally, I honestly think that the Witch Queen raid, Savathun is gonna pull the switcheroo, and we're gonna go into this raid thinking we're fighting Savathun, and then it's gonna be like, oh shit, why is Zivu here? Because Savathun
Sivu.
was doing the same thing to Zivu, and Zivu's all like, I'm coming in to fight my sister and kill
Ah,
my sister, and then we just walk in on the same room.
hey, that's pretty cool.
I think that's what it's gonna ultimately be. And so I wanted to talk about the cryptoliths because I feel like Season of the Hunt kind of blew over, and everyone was just
It
like,
did, and it was a sleeper season, and there was so much lore to unpack. And the
mm-hmm.
funny thing is when we were reading it, we were glossing over a lot of it.
Yeah.
But there's a
Oh my
lot of
god, there's
crap.
so many hints to future seasons in these lore entries. And I'm like, it's so up. They like told us what was going to happen next.
Yeah. What in the hell?
Yeah. They're really good with that. They're really good with like lying to your face.
Yeah. I think what's funny is, we get so wrapped up in the meat and potatoes of what's happening that we forget, hey man, there's a lot of peas on this plate. Or whatever, it's a bad analogy, but I'm just saying like there's a lot that was sitting there right
Yeah.
under the current. You gloss over it because you're thinking, oh, okay, this is important. I got to know this story. And so while you learn the story, you're missing everything they're telling you about what's about to happen.
Hmm. Okay. So before we get into that, how about we go over the lore card this week?
Yep.
Sound good? All right. I'm gonna put
And
that on screen. Oh,
sounds good.
okay.
All right.
I'm gonna mute
But
for a second while you start that, or
so it was
mute
a short
myself.
one this week. It was
Hmm.
short, but basically we had some issues where some some pretty not so great things happened, and so I just kind of wanted to call out an old lore card because it was a nice little Easter egg. Um, and so there's a lot of bad stuff that's happened out in the game industry that we've learned about, and I just kind of wanted to harken back to some of the things that you know we find in the game from time to time. But if you're familiar with the Activision drama and what's happening, some pretty bad news came out about some issues over there with frat boy culture, and the state of California is suing them uh, over it, and which it needs to happen. I mean, we need to eradicate this type of behavior from the game industry, definitely, no doubt.
I'm so
So
sorry I had to step away for that moment to come in on the end of that. Uh, Hearing exactly what you said, I don't need to hear anything else. Absolutely, like that goes without saying. Thank you for bringing that up. In fact,
yeah, I feel like for years, there have been things that have happened that are unacceptable, and I'm glad to be living in an era where people call out things instantly
yeah,
as soon as they recognize hate or anything that's of this type of nature. So
yeah.
anyway, that being said, it just reminded me of a few little things, and one of the items that we had in Destiny was very much tied to another game, because Destiny likes to put in little, you know, Easter eggs. And unfortunately, this other game was tied to a studio that has been in some, pretty controversial stuff right now, and it's Overwatch. So there's a game called Overwatch, and if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a PvP all game, only game, whatever,
Hmm.
mostly game, and it actually was really fun for a while for me anyway. I don't play it much anymore or at all. Um, but we have a grenade launcher in Destiny called Play of the Game. And the grenade launcher is a reference to Overwatch.
Hmm.
Um, Play of the Game is something that happens in Overwatch. It's a play of the game. It's a feature that ends in every match, showing the player who took the action, which was the play of the game action. Um, Originally, this was impossible to do as a character in that game named Mercy. Um, Later, became very rare. You had to like go in as all Mercies or something like that
It was
to
always
attain it.
the turret dude.
Yeah, yeah. I forget that guy's name. Um, Anyway, the grenade launcher, the flavor text says "Show no mercy," so it's a play of the game grenade launcher with the flavor text that says "Show no mercy" from the Crucible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get it, basically what they're saying is, you know, you the play of the game shows no mercy because that character is a healer, and it's very hard to get a play of the game as a healer
Mm.
in the game. And I think I've seen some other people out there say that they've never even seen it happen, or they've only seen it like maybe once or twice in however many years Overwatch has been out. So that just goes to show you uh, how funny that is, you know, and what the reference is talking about. But yeah, so Activision was a very much a part of Destiny for a little while.
Yeah.
We all know that, and then Destiny, you know, or Bungie broke off from them, and so I thought it was kind of neat, and I just wanted to point that out there, kind of little give a little point to play of the game, because in times like this, show no mercy,
Yeah.
just show
That's
no mercy.
that is a good double-edged sword on them.
Yeah. So that was it.
All right.
Short and simple.
I turn this one. Man, I feel like I'm just all okay. Yeah. Um, my buttons are all messed up. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I got it.
Like a master control panel with all your little
Yeah,
buttons.
everything is like I feel like everything everything this I updated OBS and now everything's all screwed up. I had a little pop-up saying that some of my files were now missing and uh these actions don't exist anymore, and I was just like whatever, they're not getting used. That remember that technical difficulties thing I pitched?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not even a possibility. Like I had music queued up for that, but that's not a thing that we can do anymore. Okay.
I think about all your buttons that your command.
I just have my Stream Deck, and they all have nice little names and pictures, but they still just don't fucking work.
I can almost hear the Star Trek noises, you know, in the background on the whatever deck.
Yeah. Okay. So that one's gone. I did not get a good picture of a cryptolith, and that is sad. But so what I did get was the image from Ishtar. So this is the cover of the book, which basically shows like a stylized picture of a cryptolith. And
Yeah.
so later on in the notes I have, actually technically earlier on, because so the book covers a fallen scavenger team that Spider owns, and so they go out and they find a cryptolith, and it does what the cryptolith does to them and converts them to Rathborn over time, I assume. And but before the book even came out, we had Emmeline Part 2, which is Osiris witnessing basically the same thing happen to a group of Cabal, and it was a group of Keitel's Cabal. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
Keitel sent a team of her Cabal in Season of the Hunt here. We knew about it. They even name dropped Keitel, and I was
Didn't
like, how did we
even
miss it?
occur to me. Wow.
But so basically, Osiris and Emmeline Part 2, he sees a cryptolith, and at the top of the cryptolith, it was said to have the sigil of Xivu Arath. And we've never seen her sigil. We have Crota, we have Oryx, we potentially have Savathun because she seems to have 7 sigils. And Oryx had a second sigil on his dreadnought as well, which was like kind of like a ring, almost like this, what I'm pointing out here.
Oh.
Almost like this, but it was full. I thought that would symbolize the fundament, not Oryx himself. But so we have this one where it kind of has these like almost like, you know, those like moonbladey looks to it, you know? It just looks like a weapon. It
Okay.
looks like a fancy weapon, like a fancy sword coming out on the edge. And so I think this like crescent shape might actually be Xivu's symbol. So if we ever do see Xivu herself, maybe she'll have something like this
Yeah.
around her. And I thought that was pretty neat. So I had that image ready. So we'll close that one. And so in Season of the Hunt, we use a Cryptolith lure to lure out the Rathborn to a Cryptolith. I don't know how this works. It just, because like you put in these like little things here and it summons the Rathborn. I guess the green one actually does the summoning. I don't know if these spikes are important or what the hell they actually do, but this is what we use to summon the Rathborn. And so the Cryptolith, as we've seen, it kind of has this like almost plant like structure to it, and so we call a similar reference to what we saw in Season of the Chosen on aboard the Glycon.
Huh?
So we have these like plant like structures. And before the show, Rhino and I were talking, and he mentioned you mentioned you were replaying Halo, right?
Yeah.
And so I tried to find something good that like looked similar to the presage, the glycon lichen, and I
Yeah.
thought this was pretty good because these things have like the sensory appendages coming out, and it looks almost identical to these tendrils that are here. You know, it's like
Oh, did you put the image up? I don't see it.
yeah, yeah. Because I have the human warrior form and the infection form, which is like a
Yeah.
little gross little leech.
I'm not seeing it on here, but yeah.
No,
Twitch.
is it not? God,
Uh-uh.
I'm sorry, everybody. I was running through images that weren't coming up, so some of those are gone now. I closed them out. I had to fish for them. So this is it. See, my I gotta reconfigure all my things.
Yeah, there we go.
So
Oh, yeah,
these
absolutely.
tendrily bits, these tendrily bits,
Uh-huh.
very similar. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with Halo, there's an ultimate threat to the universe, and it's called the Flood. The Flood very much is the biggest, baddest baddie of them all. In fact, the reason the entire universe of Halo exists is because of the threat of the Flood. Um, so not really diving in too much into the story, of Halo, but the Flood works somewhat like it's like a infectious form that can take over any living creature or sentient being, living creature, and turn them into a flood form or infected form of themselves. And then they are controlled by one mind called the grave mind, which could be a part of a bunch of other minds. Well, anyway, it's like zombies. If you're familiar with zombies, zombies eat brains, zombies can infect humans, and then humans can turn into zombies, and then so on until everybody's a zombie. Well, the same thing happens with the Flood. So the Flood basically cause you to turn into this infection form, and you become this like zombie that's a part of a collective mind. And so in Halo, the future people, right, which are called the Forerunners, the ones that basically created or decided what sentient beings were going to be allowed to live, were they were even scared of the Flood. So they basically created the Ark, which was a way to save all of the creatures that they felt they needed to save, and they set up this huge infrastructure to um, to do that. And then they created the Halo rings as a way to destroy all sentient life throughout the galaxy, and it was basically a huge weapon. And so it just annihilates all sentient life so that they can rebuild after the Flood is ultimately defeated. So the reason why they created the Halo rings was to destroy the Flood and anything else that was infected by the Flood, and then they saved as many uh, sentient beings as they could, which here we go. That's Halo after that. So
Hmm.
the flood had those little appendages, and that's kind of like their like antenna and whatnot. But it's also a way for them to infect humans, marines, elites, whatever you know race of enemy there is. They can do it all, right? So if you're not, if you get infected, you can infect someone else. Yada yada yada. But the cool thing about the flood is they break off into these little bitty forms, and those little forms can run around and infect things, and then they create bigger forms until ultimately they start making um, a bigger form, which can make more of those little forms. And
Hmm.
so when you're in the battlefield, if you're fighting them, um, anything that dies, like Marines, elites, whatever, brutes, when they die in the battlefield, these infection forms can go and reanimate them. And now you're fighting the flood all of a sudden. So could you imagine if that was in Destiny?
Yeah. That would be not great.
No, it would not be great. It would be the end all be all. I mean, it would ruin everything, right? But so we bring that up because Destiny and Halo, they're separate universes, but there's a lot of crossover in game.
Hmm.
We've talked about it. People love to bring up all the references to each other. Halo even does it too, but it's not so. It's very very subtle. If you don't know, Bungie and 343 are all basically at the root still the same people. Um, 343 and Bungie are two different studios, but it used to all just be Bungie. So back when Bungie and Microsoft were partnered together, they all worked together on Halo, and so
Oh,
Bungie made
really? I
all the
didn't know that.
so Bungie made all the Halo games, and they were teamed up with Microsoft, and they wanted to do something else. They
Hmm.
wanted to have control of their own, game, as Bungie would do naturally. So whatever decisions or whatever made them make that decision, they broke up, right? So they created Destiny. They ended their contract with Microsoft by creating the last game, which was called Halo Reach, which is my favorite game. Bungie's Halo Reach is very much, if you played Halo Reach, it's very much the like the infrastructure as to what Destiny ended up becoming, because Halo Reach introduced a lot of things that Destiny pretty much took as a skeleton.
Hmm.
You had abilities, you had loadouts, you had these specials, stuff like that, stuff that we had never seen before. Even though Halo Reach was basically a precursor to all the other Halo games, it was like a go back in time game, right? Because it was about the fall of Reach, which happened before the invasion of Halo. Anyway, in a nutshell, uh, Bungie and 343 were created out of the separation from Microsoft. And so half of the team at Bungie, or more than half, or not as many, I don't know. A lot of the guys from Bungie stayed and made 343.
Hmm.
And then everybody else went over to make Destiny. And so there's a lot of brotherhood, sisterhood, every familyhood, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
between the two studios, even to this day. Like they love to play each other's games.
Well, that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, and so they're very much best friends, and they love to support each other even to this day. So there's a lot of stuff that crosses over. But the
I love
really
I love
interesting,
hearing stories about studios that are like that are just like, yeah, we're friends, so we're just gonna Insomniac and Naughty Dog. They do that with Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter. There's a lot of like little crossover teasers between the two of those and the PS2 era.
yeah. See, I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
Well,
they were two studios. If I got this right, there were two studios that worked next door to each other, and they would be like, oh, we found out this really uh resource efficient way to do this. Do you want
hmm
it? And they'd be like, yeah, that's amazing, thank you. And they would just like help each other out with like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet and Clank,
oh, that's cool.
Jack and Daxter, etc., etc.
I would love to believe that they did that too at Bungie in 343. But I know from what I know, and I don't know anything, but from what I know about Microsoft doesn't let anybody touch any of their assets.
I mean, there has to be some level of like,
Microsoft is
this is our
insane about
secret
their
sauce. You
security.
can't have our
Yeah.
secret sauce, you know? Bungie's
But
not
here's
handing
the
out their aim assist code to anyone that makes guns feel really good,
right.
no
So
matter
here's
how
the
friendly
thing.
they are.
Here's the thing about Bungie and Destiny. The reason why Destiny has such a flawless first person shooter experience is because of the years that they built Halo on. That it's unparalleled. There is no other game at all that can feel as good as the first person shooter mechanics of Bungie Studios. They are the ones that created that experience, and of course, it translated through Halo, and Halo just kept going. But so out of the two games, out of every game there is, as far as a FPS goes, Halo and Destiny. That's the only one. So if you ever wonder when you're playing Crucible or PvP or whatever, even out running around thinking, why does this feel so good? These gun mechanics. Why does this HUD feel so good when you're playing? It's because of Bungie. They created that. I mean, that's their baby. That whole experience, that fluid motion. It doesn't stutter. It doesn't,
Yeah.
skip. It doesn't flip, trick, flap, all that stuff that you get from other game titles like EA. I mean, even Titanfall, as great as it is, it still has a lot of jitter.
Hmm.
And so it really takes you out of the experience. Whereas Bungie has completely dialed in the FPS experience to a nice, fluid, smooth, and the time to kill is great too. I know a lot of people don't like longer
Yeah, I
time to
mean,
kills.
yeah. People have
I
different
do.
opinions. They like fast, they like long, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be.
Yeah.
Um, but so while we were talking about that, I think I fixed. Well, I think I didn't fix it, but I think I made it so it will work without issue. So I'm going to check that, and so it should be on screen now. Can you check for me just to make sure?
Yeah. Yeah. There's the
Okay.
symbol.
So this symbol here is what I was talking about earlier. This crescent with kind of like this looks like a fancy sword to me. Like when I look at it, which is kind of what Osiris described it as.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I just wanted to show that. Or maybe this is her symbol, some like vertical crown looking thing, because he said it was at the top. I just thought it was an interesting detail to add to the book cover. This unique symbol here, if it wasn't meant to specify Zivorath in particular.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, I mean, nothing's. I mean, it's not. Nothing's not on purpose. Whatever.
Okay, so I got to fix everything because it is still a mess. It's not as good as I want it to be.
I
I
can see
caught
it
a
though. It
glimpse of
came
it.
in good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what I'm going for. Updating OBS, man, that was such a headache. We need to do like a pre-show next time I have to update that. One thing though, I gotta reach for it. One thing I want to mention. We are talking about the cryptoliths, not the cryptoglyph, and not
Yeah.
the cryptocon, because
Yeah.
Bungie cryptocron, not because Bungie really likes that word.
Crypto.
Yeah,
It's
especially with the
cryptocurrency.
hive. Yeah, especially with the hive. The cryptoglyph we use at the lectern of enchantment on the moon,
Yeah. Yeah.
which seems to be generic hive, and the cryptolith is seemingly exclusively a Zevo Wrath thing. But so let's get into the book.
Yeah.
And so this book it's actually kind of one of the shorter ones. There's not like a lot of in many of the books there's like a lot of like key details that could easily be missed. And this is just kind of like setting the groundwork in my opinion. There's very little like secrets that they're hiding in plain sight. And so As I said earlier, this book follows Fallen. The first entry is called Catch, and so you're introduced to the character Kosis, who is a vandal. She used to belong to the House of Kings, but everything fell apart, and so she joined up with the Spider. Uh, Being joined up with the Spider, she is the uh, crew chief of an operation which goes out and scavenges things for him, so they find a catch, they go out to scavenge the catch.
Yeah.
And in the first entry, she insists on going in by herself, and she goes in there and she finds like a ceremonial washing bowl, a child's musical instrument, a cracked ceramic effigy of a
Yeah.
servitor, things like that, and she hides them and buries them to kind of like give the catch its dignity, because she hasn't really given up on the society she remembered, even though she abandoned the house.
Right. Like she still is respectful.
Yeah. Whereas per what Spider would have, they don't give a shit. Those are valuable things that can be sold. Why are you hiding them and not selling them? Like,
Right. And she kind of feels like some things, some personal items should not be.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's because even though the fallen are doing what they have to do to survive, some of them haven't given up that memory yet.
Yeah.
And I think Kosas is an interesting character.
Yeah, no, it's
Because of
pretty
that.
cool. And I like the empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice. It almost reminds me of like, finding a teddy bear in a battlefield, kind of like,
Reading this book after season of the Splicer is really interesting as well, because it goes through so much of the like the hardships that Elixni had to deal with, because it's like, here are your options. Houses which have proven to fail time and time again. Eventually someone's gonna get a big head and try to do something stupid, and then
yeah.
guardians are gonna come in and take you out.
Yeah.
Or Spider, who's a piece of shit, and
Yeah.
you really don't want to deal with him, but they don't seem to care what he's doing. Like, he's actually doing illegal things, but no one's really stopping him.
Just to pause for a second, Spider as a character is really on the when you first look at him, you think, okay, he's just a dirty, selfish pirate.
Yeah.
And then when you learn about him, your first thought is, wow, he really appreciates beautiful, interesting things,
Hmm.
revered things. And you're like, wow, this is a man of culture. And then you read even further and you go, wait a minute. No, he just doesn't understand the value and he likes it just straight up for its face, what he thinks
Hmm.
it's worth. And so he goes back to being this dirty pirate that you're kind of loathsome
It's like,
towards.
just because an evil pirate likes art doesn't make him not an evil pirate.
Yeah, because he doesn't even know why he likes the art. The only reason he likes the art is because he realizes its value,
Yeah.
not even because he realizes its worth. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference between knowing a painting is worth millions of dollars and then having the same feeling towards that painting. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
There's no like personal value in the painting. It's just,
yeah,
look at this painting. It's expensive.
yeah. It's almost
Uh,
like cryptocurrency.
yeah. So in the second entry rations, Kosis and her team are out deep in the reef. One of her subordinates woke up in the middle of the night to take their shift, but heard whispers and followed them to a cave. In the cave, the member Savek saw a small black tower, and this was the Cryptolith. And it's kind of like how in the hunt missions you find it, and it's a small tower. It's not very flashy, but then you put down
Yeah,
the lure and it grows and it
comes to life.
glows, and yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like this crazy fluorescent green too.
Yeah, they call it a sickly green in these entries. And so in this entry as well, though, you get this look into what it's like being one of Spider's Fallen. Once camp was established, each crew member received their ether ration, commensurate with their station. Savik tried not to hunger as she watched Kosis inhale 3 full portions of the life-giving essence, more than twice her own share. The Spider had given them just 2 tanks, partly as a cost-saving measure and partly as an incentive to get the job done quickly. Like, the fallen are dying. They're out of options.
Yeah. Yeah, they gotta they gotta figure something out quick.
And speaking of worth, that's the next entry. So Savik just found the Cryptolith, and so Savik returns to camp and alerts Kosis to their finding. Kosis brought out a small team of dregs to the cave, but what was once a dark formation is now glowing a sickly green. And so it's like the Cryptolith is alive. It's growing. It's something that's not natural, or I'm not sure if not natural is the right phrase, but it's something that if you ever saw this in real life, you should not go near it.
Right. Yeah. And then there's like, there's like little words that pop up.
Yeah. Yeah, the whispers haven't so Salvik already heard the whispers coming from it. And so then when we get to the end of this book, that's actually something that I do want to bring up. But I'll save it for the end because
Okay.
I feel like the context of everything makes it
Sure.
better. Um and so entry 4 is return. Kosis disassembled and the crew disassembled the cryptolith and planned to bring it back to Spider as a special interest item, kind of like how you were saying. He has an interest in these rare things, but just because they're rare, he doesn't give a shit about them.
Right.
And Savek and the other dregs returned from the cave and alerted her that the cryptolith had reformed itself. And when Kosis arrived, she tells them to leave it, and do not return. But the tower whispered an unheard counteroffer into her subconscious.
That's
Come,
insane.
see.
Yeah.
Don't play with whispering things.
Yeah.
Like it's like a metal substance. It's like a plant metal, and they're just like, yeah, it's talking to us now. Anything to add on that entry?
No, I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. So then entry 5 is whispers. Savik is hearing the whispers from the cryptolith. She arrived at the cave in her sleep and can't focus on the work she's doing. The voice of the whisper was a strong one, but Savik doesn't know from who. And so the whispers are saying, seek the whispers. They are faint, but they are calling. The cutting word is a doorway, the first syllable of hated salvation, which I thought was interesting. I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, I know. So like the first syllable of hated salvation.
Yeah.
The
Like,
cutting word is a doorway.
yeah. So that's very Hive. They were able to
Yeah.
cut doorways into
Uh-huh.
places, but then the first syllable of hated salvation makes me think what the pyramids said to us, we are your salvation, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a key word that gets thrown around in their context.
Yep. So I mean, we know that from what we've learned over the years, we know that the darkness and like the darkness as an entity is rooted in whispering. Like,
Hmm.
they love to whisper. So it's like
Yeah,
a
it seems
running
to.
theme. It's a running theme. Um, so yeah, like if this is a hint to how the hive are manipulating their darkness, their darkness
Hmm.
at their core, then yeah, it could very well be like almost like a sword cutting a doorway, opening your salvation to be joined with the hive,
Yeah.
right? Or this version of the hive.
Yeah. And then, so the next two whispers in this entry, cleanse thyself of your decay, then the mind will be free to understand the value of transgression. And I think this one's really, really good in suggesting the connections to the flood type of thing. When
Yeah.
imagined, your potential will infect and spread. So it's like, what's actually spreading? Like, the philosophy, like, are you saying that all the fallen are going to be worshiping Zivu Wrath? Because that's what these are. Like, we don't need to
Right.
beat around the bush on that. The cryptoliths are basically tribute towers to Zivu Wrath.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because we had the Fang
Hmm.
as the artifact.
Yeah, the Fang of Wrath was an artifact, which Osiris just had
Yep.
for some
Like, here
reason.
you go. Here, I got this Fang.
I got this tchotchke in a antique shop.
Which I guess is okay. I mean, I guess it's not like out of the norm. I mean, we had like the Fang of Ute, you know. I mean, we
Well, that was
had
a
like,
gun. That wasn't actually her fang. Well, I mean, we killed her. We're allowed to have her fang.
yeah, that's true. Well, what did Osiris do to end up?
He almost died. That's what he did.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he got a Fang.
Zivo
God's
Wrath
got a
slapped me
Fang.
around. Here's her fang. Like she wasn't even there. It was the dude.
Oh, it was
I already forgot his name.
yeah, me too. The dude. You
I
know, the
mean,
dude.
yeah, from that
The
movie.
dude. Yeah.
He bowled a lot.
Yeah. Something about a chessboard
Yeah.
and like a swing. And he like flies above the chessboard. And then some singing opera woman.
Well, you've lost me.
It's the same movie.
Is it? I've only seen that movie once. I wasn't too into it.
Okay. So anyway, Osiris has a Fang, and we don't know how he got it per se, but was he special enough to get it? I don't think so.
Hmm.
Is he probably up to no good? He probably was at some point, a lot
I
up to
mean,
no good.
I think he still is personally. Although I also feel like maybe he's not. Maybe like this is like a huge misdirect from Bungie.
Misunderstanding. Yeah. Like he's like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. And then you
Yeah,
see he's just kind of like this broken man
yeah. Like
who's been putting up this charade.
Osiris is not Savathun. He's just grieving. Sagira died. Like he's
Yeah, I
allowed to be
guess
a
that's a
little
good
weird
point.
right now.
That's a good point. It's nice too because like this book kind of it played with. Remember at the time, this is when we got Crow.
Yeah.
So this book kind of gives you a little bit of a backstory as to how we would have ended up with Crow.
Hmm.
Like just because it's a parallel, like okay, there's Fallen out there running around, looking for things, obviously for Spider, and then they end up finding the Crow. So it kind of gives you like a little tie back to that too.
Yeah, Crow is a rare thing that they brought back to Spider.
Yeah, it's just a possession, dude.
Yeah.
But he ends up being anyway. He ends up being pretty important for taking on this
Yeah.
new brood of Hive.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh and so that brings us to the next entry, entry 6, Sacrifice, where the work isn't getting done quick enough and Kostas has to decide whether to either to return with less salvage or let some of her crew starve. She notices the lack of sound and knows where they are. So she arrives at the cave and they don't even notice her. One turns to speak. One turns and speaks like the whirlwind, and she kills him, extending their rations for 3 days. So the entry, the part of the entry I'm talking about there is several of them turned and stared at her quizzically. They seemed confused. The smallest dreg and newest to her crew stood up. He approached her calmly, his voice the howl of the whirlwind. Those born only to live cannot see eternity, nor are they welcome here. If you dwell on that which is beyond your grasp, you. And then she shoots him, killing him, cutting him off. And I really want to know what else he was going to say, because it
Right.
basically sounds like Zivu gospel, you know?
It
Those
does.
born only to live cannot see eternity. Like that's very Hive. You know, you have to kill, you have to live forever, you have to keep feeding your worm.
So then, okay. So then those born only and then silence, right? So like
Yeah.
killed.
And
Almost kind of
so
doing what they said.
and so I was wondering, with his voice, the howl of the whirlwind being how they phrased it, do you think during the whirlwind other Elixir experience like translate states like this? Like this is something that they know about, like has happened
I don't know
from the
what that means.
whirlwind.
My first impression in that word is I go back to D1 Grimoire, and the only thing I can first think of is, the killing word.
Hmm.
And it just makes me wonder, like, is he saying that the whirlwind was a part of that little tieback? Like, what caused the whirlwind was the killing word, and
Well, I
that
mean,
was
at the whirlwind, Oryx was at the whirlwind.
exactly. But like, did he have that power of the? I don't know. I'm just
Hmm.
saying, like, that's the first thing that comes up. Like, what would that even mean? his
Well,
vo- his his voice was the howl of the whirlwind.
yeah,
Or is it just him saying, I am so mad that all of my rage that's coming out of my voice is from the culmination of all of the bad things that happened at the whirlwind, and I'm screaming?
I kind of take it to mean like it's like a darkness gospel type of thing, where
Well,
it's
see, I
like,
almost felt like it's either literal or metaphorical. And
oh,
so
I think
like
it has to be metaphorical.
well, like I thought if it was metaphorical, it would just be all of the angst and torment and horror that he witnessed at the whirlwind is coming out of him right now in this fit of rage, or like this feeling.
Well, he's the youngest, right? The newest to the smallest drag, newest to the crew. I guess newest to the crew doesn't mean he's not old. I don't think he was there though. I don't think there's many Elixni who have survived the whirlwind left alive. I think most of them are shipborn or
Yeah.
soulborn.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's why my mind originally went back to like, you know, the killing word.
yeah, and that's what I mean. I think it's just like they have. I'm saying I think during the whirlwind there might have been Elixni who were kind of like persuaded by the darkness, right? Like they were
Yeah,
like,
that
oh
makes
yeah, I
sense.
get it, I'm on board. And so during the whirlwind it wasn't an immediate event, it was an
No, it
ongoing
was a
event.
long drawn out event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have
No,
these Elixni.
that makes perfect sense because, we've learned in the fallen lore now that that very much happened, that a
Mhm.
lot of the fallen fell to whatever it was that was over there during the whirlwind, and a lot of them fell to the darkness. So whatever
Yeah.
that meant, they're not telling us, but whatever that meant per se.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds to me like what they're saying is like, even though it only happened to however many, the story of it spread throughout the fallen. So to have someone speak, those
Yeah.
born only to see, cannot see eternity nor are welcome here if you dwell on that which is beyond your grasp, blah blah blah. It's like very much like, oh my god, they're speaking in darkness verses. So that's the voice, the howl of the whirlwind. And that makes me think, would these Elixni be considered whirlwind touched, which was a phrase thrown out for Namrask, that he was whirlwind touched.
World smoke sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good thought.
Yeah.
They could definitely do something with that, that's for sure.
And then we go on to entry 7, which is sword. And everything is happening. It's all terrible. And Kosas reflects on how far the Elixni have fallen, and thinks about her lost children and what they'd think of her now. She sees Savek alone, and when she tells her that Savek's shift isn't over, Savek lunges at Kovis and, wielding Kovis's sword, and kills Kovis. Kovis's last thoughts were of the Kell of Kells and then nothing. And so I feel like that's pretty concrete that Savek has become Rathborn.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the fall of Savik was through that sword that the
Oh,
hive love to speak in these ways.
and actually, you want to know something crazy?
Uh
Because it just occurred to me. Savek absolutely is a Rathborn, because we killed Savek as a Rathborn. They were huge.
yeah, I remember that.
They were the one at Scher's grave.
Yeah. That was crazy. What was
So
that about?
Savick went from a dreg to the size of an Archon.
Mm-hmm. Because I guess that's another thing about the fallen is how they get big when they're fed.
Yeah.
Feed a fallen and they just get bigger. So so what do you want to unpack from that part? Because if so the Rathborn, this is showing how the Rathborn have, it's not like a taken, right? It's not like a taken where Oryx just takes. It's almost like here's this thing. Would you like to have it?
Hmm.
Listen long enough, and then you'll just end up being consumed by it, right?
Yeah.
And created anew. Doo-doo-doo.
Savick definitely heard Zivu's words, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's we actually have dialogue from Crow, a salvage dreg named Savick. We'd worked together a few times out on the shore. I tried to get through her to reach the Savick I knew, but she fought so hard to free herself that she nearly tore one of her arms off. I didn't know what
You
else to
know,
do, so I gave her what piece I could.
yeah, by killing. So that's funny. I never put that together. Like I remember reading that, but I never put that together like that
Yeah.
because I read all the lore. I read all
Yeah, I
the
mean,
art.
yeah, we always read everything, but not it's not like Bungie's releasing it with like footnotes saying this
Yeah,
is the person from here. We would be the ones that have to do that.
it's such a tangled web. Um, yeah. So when you hot dog it.
Uh, and that brings us to our last entry, though. Unless did you have something else to say?
No, go.
The last entry is 8, and it's called Unmade. Savick supplicates before the obelisk. It looms over her, listing from the cave entrance into the bruise-colored sky. Its black metal surface rides and undulates like worm flesh. It whispers victory and transcendence. And so it's a really good entry. I think this one's probably
Yeah,
like
this is a good one.
this is the entry. Everything was just the setup for this entry, and so
Yeah.
the Cryptolith whispers to claim evolution, one must be unmade. The throb of ether courses through her prone form. She can feel the longing itch of her arm stumps that yearn for regrowth. Sickly sweet ether leaks from her body, mixing with that of her crewmates. And the whispers, flesh and mind are but cages, become unbound or remain ever unworthy. Savik's claws dig convulsively into the grainy dirt as her body ruptures. Her skin gives a gristly rip as her viscera expands
Yeah.
beyond its confines. The thick glow of ether is joined by another more ravenous force. Plasm spurts. Plasm?
I
Is
thought
that a
that was
word?
plasma.
I mean, if it is, it's a typo.
Yeah.
Plasm spurts from connective tissues as her body swells, molting and regrowing in an eruption of chitin. So that's another interesting thing. The chitin is a very much hive aspect. That
Yeah.
the dreadnought is made from the chitin of ground up enemies.
Hmm.
Like you, whispers again. Your prison of the flesh is being unmade. Your mind freed. Such glories do not come easy. Allow the flesh to give of itself, that it may surrender to the coming evolution.
Evolution, yeah.
There, kneeling
Huh.
before her new god, Savik's mind is broken and remade in continuous motion. She watches as her memories are deconstructed into images without association. She observes her identity dissected into the unknowable motives of a stranger. She watches herself transform from she into it. Or whispers, you will know through the pain, through the fear. There is no longer a you that was, only what comes next, and all the pain to follow. As the old self falls away, there will only be suffering. It raises its head for the first time, and it finds the tower like. The tower likewise transformed. The black spire opens like a birthing cavity, yawing forth a new realm. The breach draws the creature into it, a massive cathedral hall with malachite suns rolling overhead. Here the whispers are all consuming. As the old self falls away, there will only be suffering. There will only be suffering. Only suffering. So the
It's like,
concept of being unmade is not a new concept to the Destiny universe. In
right.
fact, it was integral in becoming a Shadow of Yore, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of freaky, man. Because well, the shadows of yore were following in
They were
the
following Yore. And so
yeah,
it kind of makes me wonder, like, how much of Rezel Azir was unmade into Dredgen Yor. No longer she, but it.
yeah. You know,
Or she watches herself transform from she into it is exactly as it was called. And like, there's that entry where Yor is talking to his ghost, and the ghost still calls him Rezel, and he's like, that's not who I am anymore. And it's
right.
like, yeah, you can rename yourself, but does that actually mean anything? But it would if Yor was unmade into something else.
Okay, so here's what I got out of the Unmade, just real quick. It's
Hmm.
the way that the trans, because this is this is a paragraph of transformation and what it's like to become unmade, right?
Hmm.
Um, so basically, in a nutshell, what's happening is there's a transformation happening, and the way that they describe it, it almost shows you how you lose everything you were before by becoming, or in the process of becoming something new.
Hmm.
And the way they describe it in here is very much becoming a part of whatever the darkness is that drives the hive, right? Because you're no longer you, you're a part of it. You are it. And this word it has come up in lore a bunch of times.
As the darkness. I just thought of something else that I want to say. So when you finish, let me
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So, but it's neat because when you learn about the hive, you know that their whole existence is pain and suffering, but that feeds them. To them, it's almost like this insatiable hunger, this need to go on and devour, to to grow. And so there is. It's almost like there's this insane amount of pleasure from what they're doing to one another and to their enemies, uh, by consuming what's around them. And so that pain and suffering becomes a part of who they are and that constant devouring need. But it also is neat because all of the hive are connected by this one, you know, almost consciousness, but not really. Like they all share. Like when you hear in the lore about how Galron puts on the helmet, and then all of a sudden he sees with how many eyes? Like a million
Yeah.
eyes, and
Yeah.
it's basically him being connected throughout all of the hive, right? And
They're
so
all
it's
individual, but they're like metaphysically connected somehow.
yes, there it is. And so that reminds me. That also reminds me of Halo 2 with the flood,
Hmm.
because the Grave Mind does the same thing. He makes everybody connected. But anyway, so that it entity, I almost feel like they're purposefully playing with that concept right here and now because they want to show you what it is, right?
Hmm.
Anyway.
So as we're talking about it, you made me realize. So let me actually reread the important part. Uh, there kneeling before her new god, watches herself transform from she into it, blah, blah. And then it whispers, you will know through the pain, through the fear, there is no longer a you that was, only what comes next, and to that, and all the pain to follow. And so basically saying like this, and before that there was the throb of ether courses through her prone form. She can feel the longing itch of her arm stumps, convulsively split plasma spurts connective tissue, uh, just like all these like painful, gross, almost like dissolving aspects of their body, right? Like things are bursting out of her, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
And then the chitin grows around them.
yeah. And so, what that kind of made me think, and where I actually thought you were going to go with it for a second there, what that made me think of was how a butterfly is created. You have the I was going to say the caterpie. You have the caterpillar. You have the caterpillar, and it makes the cocoon or the chrysalis, whatever the hell
Yeah.
the proper term is. And basically it dissolves in that chrysalis, which looks like the cryptolith,
Oh,
which
yeah,
looks
it does
and actually
kind of look
kind of
like
sounds like a cryptolith. And then they
a
are reborn as whatever
chrysalis,
they
a
are reborn
cryptolith,
as.
cryptolith, a cryptolith.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a chrysalis with a lisp.
Yeah,
But here's the
I
thing.
I could see that.
Here's the kicker. You ready for this? I'm going to put it on screen.
Oh God.
This is what the hive originally were.
Yeah, the moth people.
The moth creatures.
Yeah, I know. And I love how they put little moths here and there, little light moths on the
Yeah. That's
dreadnought,
like
just
that's
to
how they
play with
that's
them.
how they like homage it.
Yeah,
Here's another one. These ones are much less mothy. I'm not sure if this is even well, I know it's Destiny. This must have been like the transitional to Hive because it's all
yeah,
smoky. But
yeah. But see
this
that
is
one
this
on
is
the
really
very
good.
bottom left? That looks like that one looked like a blood. Very
That
bottom
just
left.
looks like a rock.
Yeah, but that's what they look like when they're carrying all the baby flood.
Oh, okay. So this looks like Flood then.
Yeah, almost. It
Yeah.
gives me like a flood feel.
But yeah, these moth designs, people are always saying like, "Oh, where are the moths? Blah blah blah. Bring back the
Yeah,
moth people." And it's always like they're the hive. And it's like when you look at these are super badass, and you can completely understand why a game is like, yeah, and this is going to be an enemy race, and look at all these variants that there are. And then it's like,
yeah.
now let's make these into 3D models, and it's like, oh, well, that can't actually because
That's
it's
gonna
too
cost
much.
$1 million. Yeah, I
It's
know.
too much.
Yeah,
And it's a shame that you can't just snap your fingers and make a game, because Bungie would
sure.
make the best game ever, I'm sure. But they had to do what they had to do. But it really sounds like that they haven't given up this like core concept of
Yeah,
moth creature, because it sounds like that's what Savek went through, this transformation of, I almost said it again, caterpillar into moth creature.
right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That metamorphosis.
Yeah, metamorphosis.
Yeah,
Oh, damn,
absolutely.
it's still doing that thing again. I forgot to fix it. I meant to fix it. That's my bad. If anyone listening wants to look it up, just look up Destiny Moth creatures, and I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. The concept art for this game is beautiful, and I and I can't help but stare at it sometimes for
It's
hours on end.
it's one of those things, where it was like, man, can you imagine if Bungie, instead of making a first-person FPS MMO open world shared world shooter, whatever the buzzwords they like to use for it, if instead of that they went like this like indie action platformer route, like side-scrolling action platformer, where it's like, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
pixel, but then you get the really cool art, and you're like, oh my god, that's so cool looking, and it's like you
yeah.
can
Chris
have.
Barrett, Chris Barrett could have done that
Yeah,
for
no, he likes
sure.
doing that, right? He does the pixel art stuff.
Yeah, he still does. He produces pixel characters
Yeah,
or mini people that make
like
platformers.
kits to like kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
I don't want to say shortcut.
No, it's like they're called sprites,
Yeah.
and sprites are like these little pixel characters with like GIF animations
Hmm.
tied to them, and
Yeah, like the
so
walking animation, the jumping animation, the attacking
yeah, yeah,
animation.
yeah,
And that's what I
and so
mean.
you
That's why I don't want to call it a shortcut, but it's like if you're like an indie dev, it might just
mhm,
be more efficient to be like, we're just going to
right,
buy this pack of sprites that look
yeah,
really good.
and then use them in your game, and then you
Yeah.
have the rights to. He also does some cool 8-bit music too. I bought one of them. I
Oh,
like
that's
this
cool.
sometimes I like tune out and just listen to 8-bit music,
Hmm.
not for any like pretentious reasons other than it just sounds cool.
Listening to Anamanaguchi.
I don't even know what that is.
You should check them out. It's a what do they call it? Chip hop.
Okay.
It's 8-bit music.
I've listened to some 8-bit music.
Yeah.
Not anything that I like cared to really learn
I've
about.
liked some. I'm pretty sure it's Anamanaguchi. I've liked some of their music, but I mean, I have to be in the mood for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that nostalgia. You know, it's like that thing. It instantly sounds recognizable from something that you experienced before. So you feel like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this because I'm feeling nostalgic, right? You know,
Chip tune.
nostalgia is a double edged sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. Bungie.
Yeah, thanks, Bungie. Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because like we constantly harken back to the good old days, right? Which and people say this all the time. You know, rose tinted glasses, right? We always look through the past
Mm-hmm.
in this like, oh, that was so much better back then. But if you really were back then, you would be complaining about the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, you'd probably be like, wow, this sucks. Why are we not
Yeah.
getting this or that? You
That,
forget all the pain.
that is that's like a secret to happiness right there, because you look back at something that you enjoyed it. You enjoyed it like 80-20, but you spent that 20%, that disenjoying 20%, you spent more time being vocal, focusing on that 20%. But
Yeah.
5 years later, you're not going to remember the 20%. You're going to remember the 80. And it's like, so why,
Why even
if you
harp
don't
on it?
like
Yeah, like
something,
why even bother?
who gives a shit?
Yeah. That's I try really hard to kind of adopt that same um, mindset,
Yeah.
maybe this is just my wisdom speaking, but it took me a really long time
Mm-hmm.
to get to a point where because I've always been the type of personality that is always looking forward, like waiting for the next thing and
Mm-hmm.
always
Mm-hmm.
living in the future and not really enjoying what's right now, right? And never and I was one of those people that never really looked back and thought, "Oh, that was awesome. That was the best time ever." I
Same.
always I spent so much time looking back on things thinking, "Man, I could have done this or that could have been cool or what if I did that instead?" And
Mm-hmm.
it took a really long time for me to break that cycle of behavior, because
Yeah.
it very much can be destructive, self-destructive, and so, I see it everywhere, and it's prevalent everywhere, and people are susceptible to the same thing, and I don't look down on anybody for experience what I used to be like. I just know that I'm in a better place now than I
Yeah.
was before. But what I hope for people is, and one of the things I wish I could help people understand is that the best thing to do is focus on the things that give you joy now.
Mm-hmm.
Have those little moments of pleasure. Open yourself up to what's in front of you and what's around you because they're going to go by so fast. And then you're going to be in the future wishing, oh, man, and it's not regret. You're just going to be like, oh, wow, I wish I spent a little bit more time doing that, or remember that time I said I was too busy to do this, I could have done it. Could
Mm-hmm.
have made it. I could have made time for it, because it goes by really quick,
Yeah.
especially when you're focused so much on the future, the present just slips through your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so for Destiny going forward, and so for players, crying about this or crying about that or being upset with the way things are now,
Yeah.
find what gives you pleasure in the game right now, and have fun with it. And
Yeah.
if you don't, play something else for a
Yeah.
little while.
And I mean, I don't, I've seen it a few times where like people I follow on Twitter, like they voice their opinion and they're not like whining about it. They're just saying like, hey, like this is kind of having this effect, and I think it would be better. Like they're very constructive about it. They're very like polite about it. They're not being assholes or anything. And then people just attack them. They're like, how dare you? And that's the other extreme, right? Where it's just
Exactly.
like an ultimate complacency where it's like, don't ever want anything to be better, accept exactly what you get and never and never be like, hey, it would be a little better if it was more like this. And as long as you're
Right.
doing it in the right ways and you're not just harping on it every second of every day, it's fine to have like a criticism. It's good to have a criticism.
It is. It
It's
is.
how
It is
things
good to have a
grow.
criticism. It's got to be constructive, right? You give
Yeah.
constructive criticism instead
And
of
even
just
if it's
tearing it.
just this activity makes me feel frustrated, and it's like this is why it makes me feel frustrated, whether it's like master vault of glass, master, is that what the whatever the high rank vault of glass is, it's
Yeah.
like master vault of glass makes me feel frustrated because the loot incentive is not there. That's constructive criticism. It's,
Right.
you know, you can
And I feel for people because my empathy kicks in when I think of how passionate the
yeah.
Destiny community is. And I really I am proud to be a part of a community that is so passionate about so many of the aspects of this universe that
Hmm.
Bungie has created. And um, so whether that be just the mechanics of the game, or trials PvP, or the lore, or just
Hmm.
running around and shooting aliens on different planets and getting to immerse yourself in the game, um, whatever gives you joy in the game, I'm glad that so many people are so passionate about it, because honestly, I can't think of any other game in its community that has been this way
Hmm.
in all of the games that I've ever played, or witnessed people play. Like, I know there are, passionate people. I know that there are extremes left and right on every issue of other games. Like Call of Duty, people get, insanely upset about that game and
Hmm.
defend it to the core. I mean, like, there's tons of discourse everywhere, and no matter what it is. But as far as Destiny goes, I just haven't seen it on this scale
Yeah.
ever. And so I think that it would be beneficial to get what people want by taking that passion and directing it in a much more positive
Hmm.
way, or in a much more constructive way. Like, you don't
Hmm.
even have to be positive, because that could be toxic too. Just
Yeah.
take it and make it constructive,
Yeah.
build
And
something out of it. Don't tear it down.
yeah. And it's just ultimately don't just live on that, don't exclusively feel like it is your burden to bear to criticize, it's not.
Yeah,
Enjoy what you enjoy, but if there is something, say it and be done with it.
exactly. Like, that's all it needs. It just needs to be. It just needs a light, shine on it. Like,
Yeah.
here, look at this. Look at this issue real quick. Hopefully you can do something about it. And let's move on. Because I'd rather spend most of my time enjoying this shit than trying to
Yeah.
tear it down.
But
Yeah, so yeah, we went on a tangent again.
we did.
That's what we do.
We have one last piece here. So that book was very much following Fallen, as I said at the start, and there was Immolant Part 2, which was following Osiris and his discovery of the Cryptoliths. So this is really short. Or Immolant Part 2 is not short, but I wrote up a summary for it, and I took out one string of lines that I thought was pretty important. Basically, Osiris intercepts a signal from Keitel, hinting her arrival to the system while watching the Cabal on the tangled shore. They were collected in a shelter of decommissioned drop pods, and they were actually members of Keitel's Blue Legion. All of them were huddled around a cryptolith. Uh, After hours, days, whatever it was, half of the Cabal leave and the other 9 stay, leaving an opening for Osiris and Sagira to go in. And just like with Kosas, the Cabal don't notice them at first. And so Sagira was able to go right up to the cryptolith and scan it. And from scanning it, we have text from Zivu or Wrath. And I'm not sure if Sagira or Keitel or the Cabal or Osiris heard it, but it basically goes, I am the war you crave, purpose eternal, a legacy in blood. And then Segura says, it's full of soul fire veins. And she nudges him. So maybe it is being heard by Osiris. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
because he actually says, do you hear the whispers? Then Zivu says, when you draw blades, you draw me. He says, do you hear the whispers? You cannot resist without invoking my banner. You're hearing something. Segura floats near him. Embrace me, bearer, and be a god of death. And then he says he's hearing whispers. One of the cabal stands and turns to Osiris. Snap out of it. They're waking up. Segura says and decompiles out of danger. Consume or be consumed. So basically, Zivu is directly talking to these cabal, and Osiris comes in and she's like, kill these cabal, you'll be a god of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting. I wonder if these whispers in Osiris, like let's say you have three possibilities now. You have
Okay.
Osiris is grieving, Osiris is Savathun, and now Osiris is rising to become a god of death of the Hive pantheon.
Interesting.
Because I feel like these whispers had a toll on him. You know, he kills the cabal, and all of their deaths feed Zivor wrath. And not wanting to let it go, they go to speak to Spider about what he knows about the Crytoliths, and he informs them that they're made by the Hive, but that the Hive on the Tangled Shore are Oryx's, and that Oryx's worm's skeleton is still alive. That skeleton was partially part of the Dreadnought. They go out to the Dreadnought and learn it's Zivu Wrath who's causing all of this now and coming to ruin her sister's schemes. Zivu was able to be present from the Cryptoliths and was able to draw tribute from the enemies Osiris killed. And the God, I almost had him. The guy, the dude, the big bad from Hunt that we chase in and out of the Ascendant Realm. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. There are so many names to remember, though.
I know, that's insane. Yeah, no.
He kills Segura, and that's that opening that everyone thinks is and that's when, and then he died too, and he became the god. He became Savathun, and it's like, yeah, that's
when everybody
possible.
thinks that happened. Yeah. I mean, it
But
could be, it could not be. I think like
I think option 3 is actually more likely now that I've said it out loud, because so if Zivorath was like, hey, I'm going to make this guy into a god of war, he's going to be a member of my team, and then she has her subordinate kill his ghost. Osiris was very much like, one of us can make it out of here, you get out of here and go tell them. And she's like, no, I'm, Hawkmoon Black Widow, I'm gonna die and you go back. And Osiris is, part of me thinks Osiris knew what was happening to him and that it was already too late, that the whispers have rooted inside him, and he was like, Segura, get out of here because I can't be trusted. But he didn't say those words, and now Segura died and Osiris lived because Zivu planted that seed, and now she knows where Osiris is going to go.
Interesting.
So that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's I know this is jumping ahead and way off into another part of the lore, but that goes into that one part of the lore where it's mentioning witnessing the ghost reviving a guardian and knowing what to do next, right?
Which was Savathun. Yeah.
And so like our enemies have learned how our mechanics work over the course of Destiny. The the Vex could all of a sudden see our light. Remember, we saw the with Osiris in the Vault of Glass, and all of a sudden the Vex became aware of his light. So
yeah, the Vex are getting smarter.
So they were getting smarter. They're learning, and the Cabal learned how to trap our light to use it against us, and the Hive are learning how we're using our light. So I mean, our enemies are figuring us out.
Yeah. I mean, we can only have it be this way for so long. They're gonna find our weakness. It's a war of attrition, and theoretically we could hold out forever, but I mean, clearly that's not the case.
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that Mara knew this all along, and she's I almost feel like she's caught in a circle, because when it makes me think about how it always does this. I don't know why, but it always makes me think about when we had the epic space battle, and she shoots the harbingers at the dreadnought, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you
and
mean.
all of that, yeah, and all of that happened, and she closes her eyes, to brace for the the wash, the whitewash. I don't know what it's called, the big explosion that just destroyed us everything when she's standing there with her uh tech witches. This is an awesome scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it always makes me go back to that and think about, because she knew for so long that so much of this was just doomed to happen regardless of what they were doing. And I guess my point is, knowing that you can't do anything about it and it's inevitable, like prolonging it is not really helping. So like at some point, there's got to be a point where you just fight. You can't just run forever.
Yeah.
So that the reason why I bring that up is that it kind of makes me feel like a lot of these moments that happen in the lore are almost the same, like almost that experience. Like you've come to that realization that crap, everything I've done to try to run away is not working, and now I've got to face it head on. And so
Y-
Osiris is kind of in that position.
Yeah.
And however the timey-wimey, whatever you want to call it, time skip, jump here, go there, don't go here, don't go there. However
Mm-hmm.
that works, we know that Osiris was mentioned in um, early on in D1, in the what was it, the Hellmouth, the pit of the whatever
The Pit of Heresy.
the pit in the Hellmouth, the darkness. What was it called? Everything comes from the same source. Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah,
Speech.
yeah, yeah. His old thing. All ends come from the same pit, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So having Osiris have that knowledge and then him try to run away to escape because he doesn't want to create a future where we are ultimately defeated. He wants to remove himself from the equation because he has had these visions or foresights of the future that could potentially happen. So he has to be cryptic and run away and try to find a way to keep that from happening
Mm-hmm.
for us. And so here we are today, having this realization that we have that the only way to propel us any further is to kind of adopt the ways of the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we are. We're using the darkness powers, which
Yeah, I mean, we're already at that point. We're already using it. You're absolutely right.
and the crow, the crow is here with the hunt.
What?
The crow, the crow is here, and he helped us with the hunt, and now he's
Yeah,
here in the freaking tower
yeah.
without his mask on.
Is he without his mask? I thought he
Yeah, he
was
doesn't
still
wear
wearing
it.
it.
No, he doesn't wear it anymore.
Oh, good for him.
Well, the CDC is saying that he might have to put it back on soon. So
And yeah, hopefully he does.
for the sake of others, at least.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's our show for this week. We've covered everything that was written in our notes for this episode because, like I said, I thought it would. We might had it. We might have to do a two-parter. We can talk about it. There is the Wild Hunt armor sets, which
Mhm.
what is that? 15 entries that all kind of focus on the cryptoliths even more. But I think we covered the gist of it. We might just not want to sit on it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Just like what was it? Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah.
Ugh. That I'm sorry for anyone that listens. That one dragged. So
There's a
we
lot to
will.
unpack, though.
Yeah, there was a lot in that book. It was important.
Yeah.
Um, we'll be back on the 15th, unless any known issues about the 15th.
No,
Okay,
unless you
yeah.
want to do it sooner, we can just come back sooner.
No, 15th is fine.
Okay.
So then we'll alert on our Twitter what the next episode's topic will be. Uh we're gonna backtrack a bit, try to get some of the seasons that we kind of skipped over done. So we still have like a bunch of stuff from Season of the Chosen. We can actually talk about Empress. That'd be a good one because that has a little bit of Zivu as well, and it's more direct
Yeah.
Zivu stuff. Because
Yeah.
I'm confident like Zivu will be mentioned. I'm not saying that we're gonna fight her, but I think like she's gonna be a topic next season. You know, because
Yeah.
it's so focused on Savathun, but Zivu keeps appearing every time.
Yeah.
I just can't overlook it. But yeah, so our Twitter at Loose Cannon Show on Twitter. You can follow us. You can set us a notification. We only tweet about the show. We won't bombard you with random things going on. Uh, Same time every other week, unless something comes up, which seems to be pretty frequently lately. If you came in late, you can find us on anywhere with podcasts. Just look up Loose Cannon, and we'll be there. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.